At the end of this video, you should be able to evaluate the trigonometric ratios of an angle in any of the 4 quadrants. The xy axis divides the xy plane into 4 quadrants. Quadrant 1 is in the top right-hand corner, where both x and y values are positive. Quadrant 2 is in the top left-hand corner, where x values are negative but y values are positive. Quadrant 3 is in the bottom left-hand corner, where both x and y values are negative. And Quadrant 4 is in the bottom right-hand corner, where x values are positive but y values are negative. Notice that the quadrants move in an anti-clockwise manner. Let's zoom into the angles of each quadrant. In Quadrant 1, the angle theta is acute, which means that theta is between 0 degree and 90 degree. Considering this point P, from which a perpendicular is drawn to the x-axis to form a right-angle triangle with adjacent side x and opposite side y and hypotenuse r, observe that the value of x is positive and the value of y is positive as well. Since sin theta is y over r, where y is positive and r is also positive, the sin theta will give a positive value. Also, cosine theta is x over r, where x is positive and r is also positive, hence cosine theta will give a positive value. Tangent theta is y over x, where y is positive and x is also positive, thus tangent theta will give a positive value. So in Quadrant 1, all trigo functions will give positive values. In Quadrant 2, the angle theta is obtuse. This means that theta is between 90 degrees and 180 degrees. Observe that the adjacent side here, x, is negative, whereas the opposite side here, y, is positive. The hypotenuse is always positive. Sin theta is a positive y divided by r that gives a positive value. Cosine theta is a negative x divided by r that gives a negative value. Tangent theta is a positive y divided by a negative x that gives a negative value. So in Quadrant 2, only the sine ratio gives a positive value. In Quadrant 3, the angle theta is between 180 degrees and 270 degrees. Observe that the adjacent side x is negative, the opposite side y is negative, while the hypotenuse r will always be positive. Sin theta is a negative y divided by r, which gives a negative value. Cosine theta is a negative x divided by r, which gives a negative value. Tangent theta is a negative y divided by a negative x, which gives a positive value. So in Quadrant 3, only the tangent ratio gives a positive value. In Quadrant 4, theta is between 270 degrees and 360 degrees. Observe that the adjacent side x is positive and the opposite side y is negative, while the hypotenuse r is always positive. Sin theta is a negative y divided by r, which gives a negative value. Cosine theta is a positive x divided by r, which gives a positive value. Tangent theta is a negative y divided by a positive x, which gives a negative value. So in Quadrant 4, only the cosine ratio gives a positive value. In summary, in Quadrant 1, all trigo ratios are positive. In Quadrant 2, only the sine ratio is positive. In Quadrant 3, only the tangent ratio is positive. And in Quadrant 4, only the cosine ratio is positive. To help you remember, you can use the acronym ASTC, which some people think of as add sugar to coffee to help them remember better. Let's apply this to some examples. If sine x is positive and cosine x is negative, which quadrant is x in? So let's remember our ASTC. A means all trigo ratios are positive. S means only the sine ratio is positive. T means only the tangent ratio is positive. And C means only the cosine ratio is positive. So if we know that sine x is positive, it means that x can be in quadrant 1 or quadrant 2. Because in quadrant 1, all ratios are positive, whereas in quadrant 2, only the sine ratio is positive. If I know that cosine x is negative, then it is possible that x is in quadrant 2, where only sine is positive, therefore cosine will be negative, or quadrant 3, where only tangent is positive, so in this quadrant, cosine will be negative. So going by these clues, notice that quadrant 2 is common between them. Therefore, to answer this question, which quadrant is x in? The answer is quadrant 2.